Um, I know that a lot of what you've been finding have been very, very cryptic, and they've been relatively small. There are all the families that I'm about to show you do occur here. They're just not that easy to find, and we're not necessarily focusing on getting all of them here all at once. Right, so right now we're focused on a few host plants, in particular juniper, and then the ceanothus and the ulmus are the big ones right now that we're focusing on to sort of get an idea of interaction diversity based on those hosts.
And can I ask you why you picked those hosts?
So the juniper is, well, ceanothus is a dominant shrub throughout this region, you know, in California and in, you know, chaparral. It's dominant in a habitat that's not well represented by other sites, and it's a very good host plant for caterpillars, very high diversity. Juniper is a host plant for which we have really good evolutionary data, so we have a phylogenetic tree for juniper, so we can ask evolutionary questions about how herbivores evolved with juniper, and that's what Nick's project will focus on. And the guy, Dave Wagner, who wrote I don't know if people have seen the Eastern Caterpillars book, but yeah, he and I had a discussion, because he had all these juniper feeders on there, and I said that I've collected the things that look exactly like that, but they're different genera even, you know, from what he had in his book. And so then he started coming out to our Arizona site, and we realized that across everywhere where juniper exists, there's been all this convergent evolution where you get all these different families of caterpillars that have species that eat on juniper that look exactly the same. But it's evolved a bunch of times independently across juniper. So it's something that Nick is, you know, so he's just started his PhD, but his PhD project is going to focus on juniper. There's a lot of applied aspects of juniper too. Some people view it as that its range has expanded due to human management of lands, and they want to cut it back. And they think diversity is higher when there's less juniper, but I disagree with that, because from a plant perspective that may be the case, but if you look at insect and bird communities, they're actually pretty rich with juniper. And so we really don't know. Nobody's ever, the kind of stuff you're doing, beating juniper trees, I guarantee you, nobody's ever done it in this area. And probably globally, the juniper, the genus exists all over the world. Probably nobody, if not, very, very few people have sampled arthropod communities off of juniper. So that's a pretty short answer. But there are other reasons why we pick focal host plants.
Is it possible that juniper trees in other parts of the country would host like a different families of caterpillars?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know yet if Sphinx dahlia, the sphingid that eats juniper that we've collected in Arizona, occurs out here. And if it doesn't, then the Sphingidae isn't one of the families that you find here, but you do find it in Arizona. There are, but for the most part, Geometrus noctuids, Lycaenids, and in a few microlith families, Gallichiids from corallids, are on juniper across at all the sites. And then sphingids, I don't know yet. We'll see. But people just haven't sampled enough. And what I want to talk about today is below the level of insect, we have orders. Anybody have any idea how many orders of insects there are?
A lot.
There's a lot.
60? No.
That's about double. So there's 30.
Okay.
Yeah. And it changes. It changes all the time with the good molecular data and just work, as we work on taxonomy, we get better at figuring out relationships. But there's about 30. Among those 30, there's 9 that are particularly diverse, and they account for most of the diversity. Right? And those are what we call holometabolous insects. When somebody asked me what a pupa was, that's what holometabolous insects have. They have an egg stage, a larval stage, a pupal stage, and an adult stage. And so what they have is complete metamorphosis. They have an immature stage that eats, and all it does is eat. It turns plant or other insect or detritus or whatever into immature insect. Right? The pupal stage is for reorganizing to the adult, where you have wings, and if you're a male, you have a penis, or if you're female, you have a bursicopulatrix. So you have all the adult parts, and then the adults are about, well, they have wings, so they're about locomotion, they're about dispersing and they have reproductive parts, so they're about reproduction. So that's a division of labor that has made those 9 orders incredibly successful. And so the 4 most successful groups of insects in terms of diversity and abundance, you see them everywhere you go in the world, including at your house, are Coleoptera, they're called Coleoptera, Lepidoptera, Hymer, and Diptera. Those ones we study, right? Lepidoptera, the moths, and Diptera, the flies, and Hymenoptera, walking ants, and sawflies and other things, but interested in the wasps. Right? So those account for, right now, 750,000 described species. Most of the described species of multicellular organisms, since there's 1.4 million described right now. Right? So the Ora is one of those that has complete metamorphosis. And this is good for pointing out how you can tell a caterpillar from anything else. They've got 3 segments like other insects. They've got a head, a thorax, and an abdomen, right? The thorax has 6 true legs, just like, insects, everyone knows they're hexapods, they have 6 legs. And true legs means they're articulated. They have all the different parts with funny names, folks everywhere. Tibia, tarsus, they all have names, so they're true segments, as opposed to the fake legs out here on its butt, the prolegs. Right? So 6 true legs, well-defined head capsule, in 5 pairs of fake legs, or what's called prolegs. Pro means just that they're fake. They also have circles on the thoracic segments to 8 abdominal segments. They have 10 abdominal segments. So 1 head, which is actually composed of about 10 segments, but fused. 3 thoracic segments and 10 abdominal segments. Right? That makes a caterpillar. If you get something that has a whole bunch of these fake legs, it's not a caterpillar. It's a sawfly, probably. Yeah.
What about the geometry?
Right. So this is what you do with any taxon. You give the basic plan. Okay. Here's the basic body plan. And then you say, but there's all kinds of modules here. So if it has these things, caterpillar does things, it doesn't really mean it's not a caterpillar. Right. So there are geometrids and noctuids that have reduced number of prolegs. There's lyncodids that have no prolegs. So there are some solutions to the theme. However, I can say that usually if there's no prolegs, it's not a caterpillar. A lot of beetles, for example, have 6 true legs, and then they have this long, flat abdomen sticking out. Many of you ever used ladybugs for biocontrol? If you do, those that have, they're grubs, they're immature beetles, but they don't have legs. Right? So that's the first part of this discussion, is telling Lepidoptera from, say, Coleoptera, Diptera, or something else. Most holometabolous immatures just look like maggots. All right, so have you seen any parasitoids popping out yet? No? Yeah. Well, we'll collect more caterpillars. You'll see some. They're just maggots. They're like little fly maggots. And, so flies, Hymenoptera, they don't have any features.
We checked the bags for those, but we didn't see any yet.
Okay. It may be low this year. It may just be a matter of time. They'll start coming out.
I think because we saw some parasite pupa. But
Right.
we didn't see any.
Okay, so they pupated. Sometimes they come out and pupate right away,
Okay.
and then it's too late. But you'll start seeing them. You'll see parasitoids.
Where's the 5th pair of the prolegs?
Up in the air.
It's the one that's sticking out.
Wait, your teeth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's just like, is that Latif? Okay. Yeah, it's right here. So 3, 4, no. Melissa's over there. Okay, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. So it's sticking up over here.
Wait, so
Where are the
specific
real
name?
ones and where are the fake
The
ones?
real or top?
So this is called the thorax, and we can call T1, T2, and T3. They're promeso and metathorax, that's just the fancy names. T1, T2, and T3, those are the true legs.
Those maybe.
This is its head.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Sometimes caterpillars have fake heads.
Look like
What's
those legs.
They look the same? Not if you look closely. I'll show you another picture. They're articulated, so they have little joints. Whereas this is just like a kind of a wart.
Suction cup too, right?
Yeah, and I'll say a couple other things about these in a sec. But let me back up. So we've got those 3 segments and the 6 legs and the 1 spiracle here and the 8 spiracles here. Anybody know what the spiracles do?
Breathing.
So it's just like a hole to the outer world, and insects are they have their ventilation systems a lot more efficient than ours. They move oxygen and CO2 through air. It moves a lot faster through air than it does in water. We move ours with carrier molecules in water.
When Angela injects the caterpillars with the beads, where exactly injecting them?
Good question.
She usually injects it underneath one of the prolegs, usually the A10 prolegs. But you have to ask her if she still does it. That's the way that we originally did it, but she may have
She showed us the
modified it.
beads today.
Okay, good,
Really
cool.
cool.
So did everybody get a chance to do that, or I think it was just a
We
few
split
of you?
out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, usually, but you didn't do any injections?
No, not at all.
Yeah. So it's back there. So that's a good place to do it. We're not liking when it comes out. All right, so the spiracles are just an open to the tracheal system, right? That's the way they breathe, right? The prolegs, the other way you can tell them apart, because Lakeisha was saying that they kind of look the same here. Is that what you were saying? Well, if you look closely, it's just like a wart, and then they have these things called crochets on them, which are hooks. And that, if you get one on you, and I know not everybody wants to get one on you, but if you get one on you, they won't hurt you. I mean, they might try to bite you a little bit, but it won't hurt at all. If you pull it off, you can feel the crochets sort of like Velcro. That's what holds them onto the leaf surface. In fact, caterpillars invented Velcro because they have the little hooky parts on their legs. And then the plant, really, if you look under a microscope, is like the fuzzy part of Velcro. And it's hard to knock a cat. That's why when you hit with the beat sheet, hit it hard the first time so that their crochets come unattached from the plant. You're getting that Velcro off of there. All right, the head is pretty cool. It's actually people, and I'll just point out a couple other features and then I'll move on to some pretty pictures. People want to know, like, can caterpillars smell? Can they see? Can they hear? Well, they can't hear really well. They can hear substrate-borne vibrations via hairs, and they all have hairs. They're called primary CD. And then some of them have what are called secondary CD, which are tons of hairs. And the head has primary CD on it. It also has 6 stomata, which are little primitive eyes on either side of the head. They've got antennae, so they can hear things, airborne things, but mostly for smelling. So they can smell things with their antennae. And they have a spinneret, which is attached to some salivary glands, which are modified to produce silk. So another thing that can happen is if you whack that tree, you can look on the tree and you can see things hanging down by silk. So they have that spinneret. They also use that silk to make a cocoon that they can incubate inside of. So they can make silk. And if anybody silk as a fabric, I love silk. It's really good for sheets too. I recommend it. Silk is awesome. But it's all made by caterpillar spit. They make all the silk in the world is made by Saturniid caterpillars. Silk moths is the common name of Saturniid caterpillars. And the whole story is that because it was in China, it was secret for a long time, is that this Chinese empress was sitting and having some tea, and a cocoon of a silk moth fell into her tea, and she started pulling it out. It was one long, long thread. And the fact is, it is one long thread that they use to make their cocoon. And they do put it in hot water, and they can pull it right off and put it right on a spool. And that's how you get silk. If you get Mae Berenbaum's book, she'll tell you all about it.
Are they indigenous only to China originally? The ones for...
Well, there's several species that are used, but yeah, the species that was originally used for silk was a Saturniid from China. But you could use a lot of different ones now. Okay, so those are some of the components of a caterpillar. I've glossed it over, we could spend hours on it, but we don't want to do that. So when you look within the Lepidoptera, how many families do you think there are? So remember, we go kingdom, phylum, class, order, Lepidoptera. Families, there's a whole bunch. There's 119 families.
I knew that.
You did, I know you're shaking your head like you do.
I knew that.
So,
I think Mariah told me that.
oh, okay,
We were
you
looking
did.
at because she was trying to actually she was naming them and I was trying to remember them.
They said, yeah, there's a lot. You can remember the ones that you're going to be collecting, you can remember easily, if you really tried, you can remember about a dozen of them because they're very, very distinctive. Beyond that, it starts getting a little bit harder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 30 families. I'm just going to briefly mention a couple of things about each one, but mostly I just want you to see some pictures of different caterpillars and get an idea of the diversity. Unfortunately, you won't see all of these things, so these are some that we've collected in the tropics where you find some of the more spectacular animals, including caterpillars. But you can find some brilliant ones like this here too. There's not quite as abundant.
When you say that, sorry.
Yeah, go for
Okay,
it.
so
Yeah.
I noticed the colors are brighter. Is that specific to the tropics, or do you find these bright orange colors here too?
You can find them here as well. There's sometimes a correlation for some groups between bright coloration and toxicity, and tropical animals tend to be more toxic because their plants are more toxic. But the fact is there's just so many more species in the tropics, so you're more likely, just by luck of the draw, to have some bright things. So it's both of those. But you can find some really bright caterpillars, and I'll show you some pictures of bright caterpillars from around here.
Yeah, my mom collected caterpillars for fun.
Okay,
And
good.
she asked me, "You find any orange ones yet?" I'm like,
Not
"Orange?"
yet.
No. You know what was interesting to me about the caterpillar? Because one, I'm afraid to touch them, but I was looking at them. I move differently. I've only seen two types of movement. Is that all they're gonna do? Two movements. You know, they hump the back and connect.
Yeah.
And then there's the one that crawl.
So the ones with the geometrids and loopers, the noctuids, reduce their missing legs. The others that just crawl along, there's two legs, but there's others that thrash along. So if you open up their shelter, like sometimes you open up their shelter, they thrash and they can move along that way. There's others that roll, they actually grab onto their mouth and roll. But the method of motion is to use their all of their pelvis. Yeah. Is there another question? Oh.
Well, it was common, I didn't get one, but collected caterpillars with Angela, and I asked her if they also do beatings in Ecuador, and I think it was Costa Rica, and she shared that, to collect the caterpillars, and she said that in Costa Rica you guys do more by observation and picking.
Yeah, we use the bead sheets as much.
You pick up a lot more, you draw a lot more insects.
No, densities are not higher. The wet forest in Costa Rica densities are really low. It's really, people get really frustrated. Like are from Costa Rica, but people get really
Yeah,
frustrated.
that's surprised,
You can't
because
find them.
you mentioned the species there, the numbers were, you said about
So,
7,000.
Richness isn't one of the things that's going on there. That forest is really high parasitism rates. So densities, so massive diversity. And so it's kind of warned the volunteers right away. Some very attractive cool caterpillars here, but you're not going to find a whole lot. And it takes a lot to get like a series of like what we get. And the thing is that after working there for many years, we've gotten a lot better at finding where they are. But still, when we do a plot, we don't have higher densities there than we have here. We have higher densities here, and you can get if you beat like some of that Ceanothus, it can yield just literally thousands of caterpillars.
We ran out of bags, both
Yeah.
groups ran out of bags yesterday.
Yeah, you can get just and some things in the Sonoran Desert, like the Ocotillo that has these Lycodeids on it. We couldn't even collect them all. We just had to get a count. I mean, there were literally over 1,000 on one Ocotillo plant. So yeah, the density can be very high up here. Right, so there are 30 families, more like 35 families that we focus on out of the 120. So a lot of Lepidoptera are internal feeders. So about 80 of the families, they live inside the plant. They live inside fruit, or like a corn earworm. That's a caterpillar that lives inside of the corn, or they'll live inside the leaf. These things called leaf miners. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed little designs on the leaf, but leaf miners do that, and they're eating inside of the leaf tissue. So what I'm going to do is go over the most common families that we encounter in our project. And these are large, externally feeding caterpillars. And I'll show you slides of most of the families that we work with. I'm going to show you slides of about 30 families. All right, they're all listed here, but don't worry about. I'll just point out, sometimes people like to see the way things are spelled. So the word we've been saying a lot, geometridae, is right here. Saturniidae is the silk moth. Syngidae is the hornworm that I've mentioned a couple of times. Another one that you talked about, yep, are the noctuids, Noctuidae. And Archaeidae are the tiger moths, or the woolly bears. All right, so I'm going to show you slides of all of these. Let's start with the least attractive, the ones that you might like the least. And these are what usually, if you don't know caterpillar families very well, you'll just call these microlaps, right? Because most of them are little tiny moths. Even though the caterpillars might get big, the moths are pretty small, and they're seemingly obscure families, but they're actually pretty important. Most of these all the families I have depicted here are shelter builders. And most shelter builders are in the group that we call the Microlepidoptera, but if you find a shelter builder and there's a bunch of poop in there, it's most likely in the family Paralidae. Right? You have collected paralids, or at least the group before you did. These are both paralids. They usually roll leaves up, and then when they poop, they don't do anything with it. They just keep it in there. And it's actually an easy way for parasitoids to find them, so they have very high levels of parasitism. There are other types of shelter builders, a tortricid. Also, they don't get rid of their feces. They don't throw their frass. So caterpillar poop's called frass. Supposedly it's derived from the words "from the ass," but that's not. Frass actually has another etymology, but it's an easy way to remember it because that's where it comes from. At least the caterpillar's ass comes from. But anyway, they're frasses along with them. So Tortricid is Paralids are like the third largest family of Lepidoptera in terms of diversity. Tortricids are pretty diverse too. And in fact, there's a guy, the world's expert in Tortricids is Jerry Powell from California. Carutids, they actually sew leaves together, right? So one of the ways you can tell different families of caterpillars isn't necessarily by all those parts I was talking about. It could be by the way they make their shelters, right? And so a lot of these I know because of the shelter that they built. So there's 3 families for you. Here's some more Paralids. I like to show this one because these are a bunch of parasitoids inside of here. Kind of hard to see, but each one of those white things that's about that big is a parasitoid. It's really easy to find them because there are a lot of volatiles coming off of this frass. With things with names like scatol. Scatol is a real compound. It's a very simple compound that's volatile, and it's what gives poop its characteristic smell. It smells bad. But parasitoids key in on that. They can smell it really well with their antennae. They can find these and parasitize them. The next group is a lot smarter about building their shelters. They're also shelter builders. And they're called the skippers or the Hesperiidae. Very cool group. They're really easy to tell because they have a big head and a little neck. T1 is constricted. So they have clean shelters. I don't know if I mentioned these. Did I mention the whole habit of throwing frass to you all before? Or is that the girls? Okay.
No. But Mariah mentioned it. She said you got some frass thrown on your shirt.
Yep, I did.
Oh, that's right.
In
It
fact,
was in one of the articles that was sent from Earthwatch about
Okay.
that.
In fact, it was a Hesperiid. It was a skipper. That's exactly right. So skippers also have something that you won't see. It's called an anal comb, and right when the frass ball comes out of their anus, they put it onto that anal comb and they flick it. And they throw it really far. I mean, some Hesperiids can throw it across this table, which I always like to say would be a great party trick. If you scaled it up, you'd be able to throw your poop like the other side of campus. Which is, and the reason why they do it, we think, is for one, it keeps a very hygienic home. There's no bacteria growing in there or fungus that grows on the frass. For the other, it's hard for parasitoids to find them. And I always like to mention frass throwing because there's a lot of different not just the Hesperiids. Some caterpillars actually grab it with their mouth, kind of gross, and then they throw it. So it's a way to thrash, and then they let go of it at the end of their thrash, and it goes flying. Others can shoot it right out of their anus. They actually use hydrostatic pressure and actually pop it out. And so when we look for caterpillars, sometimes all we look for is frass. That's what predators and parasitoids do as well. So if you can get your frass away from you, things aren't going to find you as easily. That's one of the big reasons why they do it. And bigger animals too. The whole thing of defecation is there's a whole, you can call it fecology, fecal ecology. It's very interesting because it does introduce danger. So a lot of cats, when they're defecating, they're vulnerable, so they'll back up against a tree or a structure. So if you go out to the rainforest, if you go out to the structures that are way out in the forest, they smell like cat. They always smell like cat poop because the cats like to go up against the wall and poop there because they can look and see if anybody's coming. But anyway, caterpillars do the same thing. They get poop away from them. They don't like it around them. At least the Hesperiids. So these are the skippers, and they're in a superfamily called the Hesperoideae, which is related to the Papilionoideae, which are butterflies. Here's some more skippers. See, they have the big head and the little neck. That's the big thing. And they all have clean homes. You can see there's no poop near any of those. Okay, the Papilionoideae are the butterflies, and it includes 7 families. All of them are butterflies. And they're basically special moths. They're moths that fly when they tend to have clubbed antennae. Right? So when people call the Lepidoptera the butterflies and moths, it's really just the moths. And some of those moths happen to be butterflies. So the swallowtails are cool. They have these things called osmeteria and T1. There's these vertebral glands. If you bug them, they shoot them out. They have all these volatile toxins that scare away a predator. It's also kind of a startle mechanism. These are, by the way, these are some parasitoids that have just popped out of this Papilionoideae. So you've seen a lot of swallowtails flying around up there, haven't you?
Yeah.
Right, this is what the caterpillars look like. In fact, the ones that you've seen flying around look like this.
Wow.
So you can find some of those, if you look a little bit at other host plants. And, when you're not collecting up there, if you want to go look for other caterpillars, go for it. It's cool to find swallowtails and, see what parasitosaurs are.
What's their host plant?
The ones that you're seeing up there, I don't remember what's up there right now. But they tend to eat vines. And I'm trying to think of what's up there that they're eating. I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to look to see what exactly. In fact, butterflies are a lot better studied than other things, so we know what their host plants are for most of the things you're going to see flying around for the butterflies. These are the Pierids. They have these little things called annulets. They have 6 per segment. They look like little wrinkles, or love handles, I like to call them. They're hard to find. Up there, you could find them though. You see white and yellow butterflies flying around in the fields. That's what their caterpillars look like. Pure white, pure yellow butterflies are Pierids. This is the group that Mariah likes. These are the Lycaenids, and they all have specialized adaptations for ants. They have rewards that they provide to ants, sugar water basically, just like aphids do, and ants protect them. This guy named Phil DeVries, who wrote The Butterflies of Costa Rica, made these little microphones for Rhydinids and Lycaenids because they have these little structures for calling for help also. And so if a wasp is bugging them or another ant, they'll call for help and the ants will come running and scare away whatever's bugging them. He has recordings of them, because he's got the little microphones and he can record it. And it kind of sounds like they're saying, help, help me, help me.
In English or Spanish?
The same, yeah. That sounds like both languages. This is the sister tax. So these guys do the same thing in English and Spanish. These are the Rhydinids. I'm not going to go into all the characteristics of those because I'm going to start flying through some families here. This is the biggest family of butterflies. They're called the nymphalids, or generally called the brush-footed butterflies. And I'm going to show you, remember I said that we started to make finer subdivisions? There are a bunch of subfamilies of nymphalids, and I'll show you a few. These are called the long-winged butterflies, or the heliconines, and these are the ethomines. These have vomited all over the place, which is a caterpillar defense. If you bug them, they've got toxin. Plants are toxic, and so a lot of caterpillars will store plant dissolved in water in these little diverticula, and if you bug them, well, you burn those and vomit will get everywhere. And you may notice this, if you take a caterpillar out of the bag and you bug it at all, you'll see green stuff everywhere. It's okay, it's just vomiting on you. Or technically it's regurgitating, it's not vomiting. It's not coming from its gut, it's coming from these diverticula. These have fancy names. These are brassilines and caraxines. Have you ever been to Costa Rica? Has anybody been to Costa Rica? See the big owl butterfly? It's actually the caterpillars are pests of banana plantations. I've studied them. These are the caterpillars of the owl butterfly. So these also look kind of like the owl butterfly. So those are called brassilines. These are called nymphaliines.
Is that the head or the butt?
This is the head right here.
Oh my god.
Is that the
there's
6
a small
eyes you
parts
were
right there.
saying that they had on the side?
These are its eyes right here, 6 on either side. I'll show you another, one of the big Saturniids. You can see the eyes really well.
Oh, I love
Then,
that one.
and then this one's very, very cryptic, obviously.
Oh,
That's
okay.
like that line there. The melitines are called checker spots. I don't know if people know butterfly names. The crayines, Danaines, monarchs
okay.
are Danaines within the nymphalids. And then the satyrines, or the satyrs, always look really cryptic, look just like the underside of the leaf. And then this is just a tropical subfamily that, several of the subfamilies that I've mentioned are just tropical. These are the morphines. I don't know if you saw the big blue butterfly. If you've been to the tropics, Costa Rica, they're really common.
The morpho.
This is what the caterpillar looks like. It's pretty big. It's like that big. That larval stage there. Okay, these are again moth. Much more moth families. This is called the Megalopygidae, and most hairy caterpillars are pretty harmless, but a lot of people have pretty bad reactions to hairs. Everybody has bad reactions to the hairs on megalopygids. they're in a group called the zygonoids, and all zygonoids sting. Right, so if this looks like, Elvis's hair or something, it'd be fun to like run your fingers through it. But if you did, you'll get a bad rash all over your hands and it'll really hurt. So they also have spines underneath there. So these are stinging, spiny things. They're really easy to tell. Their head is sucked into the thorax and they have an extra pair of prolegs. That's their characteristics. And this is their sister family, the Limacodidae or the saddleback caterpillars. They also sting. Don't touch them. We can find saddlebacks up here. Limacodids. This is my favorite family of caterpillars. I just love them. They're just beautiful. They have a big sucker foot underneath, so all their prolegs are modified into one big sucker foot.
Wait, do these turn into moths or butterflies?
Moths. So these are the butterfly families are just a really small part of the Lepidoptera, and that's just finished with the Morphos are the last subfamily of butterflies that I showed you. So these are Limacodids. They're little brown moths. The caterpillars are a lot more attractive than the moths. Okay, so this is the most abundant caterpillar family anywhere you go in the world. You all know this one, right? Geometridae, right? So A6 and A10 prolegs, geometries, and they move on.
Can you repeat that?
A6, the 6th abdominal segment and the 10th abdominal segment have prolegs, and that's it. So A6 and A10 prolegs. There are other things that move like that have more prolegs. They're not geometrids. Right, so this is a massive family. There's nobody in the world right now doing the taxonomy of the geometrids. So most of what we rear out, if it's a new species, it will never get a name because there aren't any taxonomists to name them. They're an amazing family. You look at the kind of diversity that you see in the immatures. So a lot of them might just look like this, little green guys or black guys. There's some variation in the coloration here, but Eoas, this genus, for which there are about 3,000 species, most of them are just these little green caterpillars like that, relatively nondescript. But there are a lot that look like this one, where they look like twigs. Very good twig mimics, really hard to see. Or the ones that you've been collecting, which I really think are beautiful, the ones that look just like the juniper. So you've all seen the juniper geometrids by now, right?
Yeah.
At least, if nothing else, you saw them in the zoo. They're hard to see, actually. Most people in the world have never seen them because you have to actually, it's almost impossible to pick them out by eye in the tree. And it's funny because there's a guy here at UNR who's studied juniper all his life. And he took me out to this juniper grove and he was going on about something, and I said, well, yeah, there's a lot of caterpillars that eat juniper. And he said, there are? I said, yeah, and I just beat it a little bit and found him a couple, and he was stunned. He had no idea. He'd spent a lot of time looking at juniper and never seen this. Okay, so I'm going to just flash through some of these. These are called Apatolotids, no common name. I like them. They're cute. Hairy caterpillars. Lasiocampids are called tent caterpillars. The Saturniid, the silk moths. So, Lakeisha, you can see now the eyes, see a little bit better. But you can see the segments on the legs. That's the coax. You can also see the spear really well there. So here you see the scented ladder. Always silk moths. Another family of big caterpillars are the hornworms, the Sphingidae. Right, so this is one species, Hemeroclines natus. And remember, I mentioned this before, these are its 6 true legs right here. This is its first and second abdominal segments. Remember, they have prolegs on A3, 4, 5, and 6. Those are its prolegs there. So this is the underside of this caterpillar.
I was going to say, so are we looking at it at the bottom?
Yeah, this is its venter right here. Yeah. So this is the top of the caterpillar here, the dorsum. Right there, and there's all sphingids have a horn. That's why they're called hornworms. There's its horn right there. Okay. Very cool. This thing's massive. I thought it was a snake when I first. So I was going looking for caterpillars, and I reached up, and it flipped over because it's cryptic. It looks like a twig, and if you go back, it flips over and it inflates that part of the abdomen and look like a snake. It's an awesome caterpillar. So this is very large. Caterpillars, very well-known adults. So the adults are called hawk moths, and sometimes you might mistake them for a hummingbird. Right? They're big-bodied and they fly and just like a hummingbird does, and they pollinate the same kinds of flowers that hummingbirds do. This is kind of cool. Sphingids oftentimes will have, this had these bruises from a tachinid, and by the way, I'm almost done with the family, so we're getting there. These bruises from a tachinid that's in the inside because they breathe by sending tubes to the outside of the caterpillar. And so we knew this guy had tachinids, and we had it, and we were looking at it, taking pictures, and we noticed that there's this wasp right here. What do you think this wasp was doing?
Right.
It was looking for the tachinid inside of this caterpillar.
Oh, wow.
And she was walking around and stopping, and they have the little things they listen with on their feet. And then she stopped right above where the bruises were, and she heard it in there, and then she did the thing where she stuck her ovipositor into the caterpillar and then into the fly. And we got to see the whole thing.
Wow.
So instead of getting flies, so not only did we not get moths, but we didn't get flies either, we got these little chalcids out of that. Here's some more sphinges. Here's the bruises. This is what the bruises look like. Meaning there's a fly in there. So that's how you can tell there's a fly parasitoid inside of the sphinge.
Oh, wow.
Notodontidae, notodontids all have reduced A10 prolegs. They're little tubular things, but so it's hard to see that they're prolegs sometimes. In that first slide that I showed you, that was a notodontid. That's why you couldn't see the A10 prolegs that well. Here's a couple of the eyes here with the stomata. You can see them sticking out there. These are all notodontids. And then the archaeids, the tiger moths, which actually, since taxonomy is evolving very quickly, these are now a subfamily of a brand new family. It's called the arabids, but we'll just call them the tiger moths. Or the woolly bears. The caterpillars are referred to as woolly bears. So they're all fuzzy. Fuzzy, hairy. Usually if you find a hairy caterpillar, it's a woolly bear. It's an archaeid. Beautiful adults. So if you look at their different subfamilies, now tribes, so like the Tanuchines, which that is down there, they as adults look like wasps. They look just like wasps. They have clear wings, they have red and black on them, excellent wasp mimics, and they fly during the daytime. So archaeids are great. And then the very last family, any guesses? They kind of look like geometrids, but they're not. And they kind of look like archaeids because there's hairy ones, but they're not. This is the largest family of Lepidoptera. If somebody shows you a little brown moth and says, what is this? If you guessed this family, you're probably right, it's the Noctuidae. Right? And if you find a caterpillar that doesn't really look like any other family we've talked about, it's probably a Noctuid. So Noctuids, some of them are like geometrids, but look, this has more than 2 pairs of prolegs, so it's not a geometrid. It's got 3 pairs. It's, even though it still moves like one, it's not. Same with this one. Right? Just because this one's hairy doesn't mean it's an archaeid. Right? So Noctuids look like all kinds of different things. There's a bunch of Noctuids here as well. So, and I think that's it.